all the lines real quick. There we go. Okay, so all the lines are muted. We'll simply ask you to try to maintain your mic being muted. If you need to ask a question, by all means, utilize the chat. If there's an opportunity for you to ask a question, kind of jump in there, do so. But I'll be on the lookout for mics that have unmuted and causing some background noise, and I'll try to stay on top of it and mute you again. So with that said, it is 10 o'clock. Welcome everybody. Joe, it's all yours, sir.
Well, I'd say the same thing. Welcome to our, gosh, what is this, our fifth or sixth? I guess it's our fifth virtual meeting. I'm getting a little bit worn out with the format, like I'm sure you all are. But you know, things just aren't getting better enough for us to get together in person. So I guess we'll keep doing this until we can't stand it anymore. So, Daryl, I'm going to let you give us the directions on the how to handle the webinar again. I would imagine most everybody here is a veteran, but it's probably worth hearing one more time.
Okay, so I've muted all mics. Mics should mute automatically when you connect in. You have the unmute option. You're able to unmute yourself. We kindly ask you that you try to stay muted as much as possible just to avoid background noise. I'll be monitoring the chat. If you have a question and you don't really have the opportunity to jump in there and ask your question, just throw it in the chat and we'll make sure we get it addressed after that. I am recording these meetings. It takes a little bit of time to code them after the recording, and I'll just put links up on our website under the main virtual meeting link if anybody misses something and wants to go back and look at it.
Hey, thanks a lot, Daryl. Tell you what, let's start it off with our standard Pledge of Allegiance. In times like we're seeing this crazy 2020, I think it's even more important that we definitely focus on the unity of the group and our nation. So let's start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll lead you. You'll have to hear me, but if you could silently voice it yourselves at home. I pledge allegiance to the flag, the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks a lot, guys. Tell you what, Bill Donahoe, it probably works best to have you start off with a report, mostly to explain our donation. If you want to get involved with the 50-50 giveaway at the end. And secondly, give us a real quick financial update, which probably hadn't changed much.
Okay, can you hear me, Joe?
Gotcha. You're loud and clear.
Loud and clear. Okay. Financial report. We have $8,545.71 in the treasury at the moment. And you're right. Most of the income is coming in. We're getting about $150 a month, mostly from the swindle. So with that in mind, the next 15 minutes, the swindle will be open. Please go to the EAA 302 website and hit the donation button. And that will take you to PayPal, where you can join the swindle today. So we'd love to have you join up. A lot of you already have. That's the fun part at the end. That's all I've got.
Okay, and also it's worth you mentioning that I checked it out this morning because I did a donation. Before we go any further, is Miles' audio the one? Yeah. Can we mute Miles for a second there, Daryl? Maybe his isn't the one. If you do decide to give a donation, great. You're going to get a reply message that it says it was rejected. That would be on our 302 website. Disregard that. It's a false message from PayPal. It does work. You don't have to hit it twice. If you do hit it twice, you're going to donate twice. So there's nothing wrong with that either. Okay, let's move on to the introduction of guests, new members, personnel. And I know, Jim Morgan, you've got somebody online with you right now, Nate Bosberg, that you could introduce for us.
Well, okay, I wasn't expecting to introduce Nate, but Nate Vosberg is has a hangar, shares a hangar across from me in the hood, I think we call it. He has a Cherokee 140, and he's been working on his private pilot license. And I just encourage him to check in with us just to see what we're about, and maybe connect with other like-minded folks about aviation here at the Conroe Airport. So welcome, Nate.
Nate, can we hear from you real quick?
Well, thanks for the warm welcome, and thank you, Jim, for the invitation. I'm calling in from Austin. We just got back from a bike ride, but have actually attended a VMC IMC meeting before all of this started off. So I've been to one EAA meeting so far, and looking forward to making some more of them. Just I thought as a certificated airplane co-owner, I would sort of explore the experimental side.
Hey, excellent, Nate. Yeah, you don't have to have an experimental airplane to be part of our group. It's really aviation in general. And as you found out in the IMC VMC, that's not aircraft specific at all. So
Sure.
Great. I think our greatest value, even though we're having to do this virtually these days, but the greatest value is the interconnectivity that we can give people, just to talk with other like-minded people. So welcome aboard, and we'll come looking for you up there in the hood. Thanks, Jim. Do we have any more? We don't have Bob Humes on board today. He normally runs the new members. Miles, do you know of any other members that we've got via the internet in the last month?
No, I don't have an update on that.
Okay.
There's been no other people join through the
Okay.
treasury.
Yeah, Bill, I guess you're a great source too, because you see all that money coming in. Okay, thanks a lot. Tell you what, Miles, let's move on to the next item of business here. It's a safety minute, and I believe you've got a little discussion on high density altitude. Surprisingly enough, even in Conroe, as we get, you can easily see 3,000 foot density altitude in the summertime, and of course, if you get up in the mountains, can get even higher, where you can really notice a big difference. So, have you got that video set up for us, Miles? I hope we still got Miles. Hey, Daryl. Daryl, we got you on here?
Yeah.
Here we go. Here's Miles.
And you're watching 57 Seconds to Safer Flying. Failure to take density altitude into consideration can put you and your passengers into a situation the airplane can't handle. High density altitude means air density is reduced. It's a combination of the lower pressure of a higher altitude and higher than standard temperature. Example is a hot day at a high altitude. High density altitude has an adverse effect on aircraft performance. The airplane wing is getting less air to react to, as the normally aspirated engine has less air to mix with the fuel, throwing the air-fuel ratio off. That's why leaning the engine with the mixture control is critical above altitudes greater than 3,000 feet. Normally aspirated engines develop 3% less power for each 1,000 feet of density altitude gained. That translates to 70% power at 10,000 feet density altitude. Taking off at 70%? How much more runway will that take? Math time. Pull out that POH. During the takeoff, be patient. The airspeed indicator will be slower reaching rotation speed while your sight picture appears somewhat normal. Resist the temptation to rotate early. Lifting off too early may work at first until you're out of ground effect. The danger here is a mushy climb rate. Pulling back sharply increases the risk of a stall spin accident. For risk mitigation, select a point 50% down the runway to abort the takeoff if you're not close to rotation airspeed. The FAA safety team recommends pilots receive specific personal training on mountain flying. We know this edition of 57 Seconds ran a little longer than 57 seconds, but we thought it was important to show you that last video of a plane struggling to get off the ground in a high-density altitude situation. For the FAA safety team, I'm Phil Dixon.
God, that'll bring chills to you. At least he didn't show us the video of the guy that ended up hitting the ground in a high density altitude takeoff. Miles, I believe you got the next thing set up there for you on Ike's, President Eisenhower's constellation. That was the first Air Force One.
This aircraft is the smallest airplane ever to carry the call sign Air Force One. When General Eisenhower left the Army, he and Mamie bought a farm in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. They lived there and traveled there, made that their retreat. When he took office as president in 1953, he went to his Air Force One pilot, Colonel William Draper, and said, "I'd like to go back to the farm regularly. They won't let me fly on a helicopter, and it really is hard to drive a presidential motorcade 150 miles. Find me an airplane." And after a competition, the Air Force chose the Aero Commander 560A. They actually bought it straight off the factory floor in Bethany, Oklahoma.
This airplane became available through an auction in Oklahoma 23 years ago. And at that time, it was a very tired, worn out little Aero Commander. After buying the airplane and researching it, finding out what the history was, it was decided it needed to come back to its original state. It's the last L-26 that anybody's aware of that's in civilian hands. It was at the bottom of the barrel at that point. There was nothing left to do than to start from scratch, which would be to do all the sheet metal repair, take the entire interior out of the airplane, and rebuild it as well as we could to keep it a flying airplane.
So the aircraft is painted in a factory paint scheme. This is exactly the way the airplane came off the factory floor. When the Air Force acquired the aircraft, all they added was the stars and bars and the United States Air Force on the engine. President Eisenhower liked those colors. Commemorative Air Force acquired the aircraft in 2019. And we set about looking for a mission. It's not a typical warbird like the Commemorative Air Force flies. But one of the things that's unique about the airplane, and one of the reasons that Colonel Draper chose it for the president, was because of the easy access in and out of the cabin. So we developed a program called Victory Flights for Veterans. And what that means is we will take those veterans that either don't have the financial capability or don't have the physical capability, put them in a presidential aircraft, and take them on a ride as a way of saying thank you for your service.
As a single owner, I was really not able to promote, advertise, get the sort of exposure that the CAF is able to do so good. I can't believe the attention the airplane's gotten at this first show that the airplane's been at under their ownership. It's wonderful. I think more people have had opportunity to stop and really see this at this one air show than in the 23 years that I've had the airplane and tried to share it with the public. So I think, in fact, I know the airplane's in the right place now. It's going to be cared for and appreciated, and will be here probably long after I'm gone, and that's really makes me happy.
That's a cool video, Miles. Thanks for finding that thing. I haven't seen it at Oshkosh, though. Was that something up there? It was up there? Okay. Guess I'm not going to get an answer to that. You've got now a tribute to Bud Anderson and SP-51.
Give me just a second on that one.
Okay. Excellent. Here we go.
I felt confident in the airplane.
when you first start flying, there's fear of the unknown. And then after you get a few combat missions, it's not so bad. And then if you're really successful, and then it seems a little easier.
A Mustang tribute to Colonel Bud Anderson this afternoon. So you'll see as many Mustangs as you've probably seen in a very long time flying together in tribute to Colonel Bud Anderson. Colonel Anderson was a 16 1/4 ace in World War II.
Yeah, it's a P-51D. It's not an original airplane. It was put together, I think, in the 80s, like many of these Mustangs are. But it's a lot of fun to fly. It dawned on me I'd rather bring one back to life than I would just buy a Mustang, and I had the time because at that point I only had 350 hours in a T6. So this plane was in a landing accident in Florida, and I had about 2 years left to get to my 500 hours. So the restoration began in concert with me getting to 500 hours. The best part about owning it is the people that I've met. I don't think I would not have met under normal circumstances. Really kind of had the run the gamut of military ranks that have been passengers to astronauts to some guy that's making model airplanes still as an adult. I rarely fly it alone, actually.
My dad left me a few airplanes after he passed 2.5 years ago. The aircraft behind me today is a North American P-51H model. It's the last production model of the P-51 series of Mustangs that North American built. They only built 555 of them. There's about 7 airframes left in the world, and this is the only flying example today. The H model is here today because of my father, Michael Couchis. He started buying warbirds in the 50s. There's about 5 or 6 Mustangs out here that my dad owned at one time. And this one here, when he first saw the H model, he just had to have one. And he set out on a quest to get one, and it took about 4 years to find it. 22 years ago, I started flying it, and my son, Nicholas, started flying it about 2 years ago. So it's the 3rd generation of Couches flying this aircraft. I grew up with it. I helped my dad with it, and when I fly it, I think he's there looking at me. Sorry. But he loved this airplane, and I love it just as much.
It's unusual because it's the only one in the world that flies, and there are only 2 that are in civilian hands. There were 272 built. Only 5 survived the scrapping in 1953. Now, one belongs to Pat Harker, who lives north of here up in Anoka, Minnesota. He's doing a beautiful job on an E model. And this is the only other civilian one. His is an E model. This is the XP First to Fly. And there's 3 others in military museums, which will never, ever come out. We always knew we would finish it. It took us longer than we thought, and a few dollars more than we thought, but that's the way it always is.
That's what we're about, is preserving our history and telling it as it was, and these airplanes speak loudly.
liked about the Mustang was I felt like me and that Mustang could take on anything Germany had.
All right. Well, those represent some pretty big projects. So why don't we move on to the projects we've got locally? I believe, Miles, have you got Jim Moracle's probably the first update, isn't it?
Yes, give me a second.
Sent you a few pictures. We've got, go ahead and text if you've got any updates for us that we can present at this time. Right now on the list, I got Jim Moracle, Daryl, Don Geis, Bill Donahoe, and I'll give an update on Ed O'Quinn. Let's see what Jim's got going. I know he's been in the process of the covering of his Carbon Cub, and has a really cool paint booth going that he's going through the process with. What do you think? Miles is having too much fun up there in Michigan.
Give me a second. I'm pulling it up right now. Can you hear me?
No problem. I'll tell you what, I'll go ahead and give you just a verbal update. One of our members, Ed O'Quinn, had a really nice RV7 that he built back in 2000. And I believe it was 5 as when he finished it. I've flown with Ed on a couple of trips. Ed took his RV7 around the country and flew to 49 of the 50 states. I'm going to leave it to you to guess which state he didn't get his RV7 in. He also managed to get it to every province in Canada other than the far northeast one, which I can't pronounce. He sold that RV7 to Dave Christie, who used to be the owner of Galaxy Aviation. And of course, Galaxy now is thriving on the field with the Black Walnut Cafe, where we normally meet. Dave's wife and son still work at Galaxy. Dave is the airport manager up at in an airport in Kansas, near Kansas City area. And he bought Ed's airplane to be able to commute back and forth more easily. I noticed on FlightAware that he just flew it back down here yesterday. So anyway, that's an update on Ed's. So that's an old project. Let's go to some new projects. It looks like Jim Moore's airport is up and running here. Jim, can you give us a verbal update?
Yes. Can we expand the picture, or is that just going to be small? Anyway, I'm building a Carbon Cub EX, and I am in the cover phase. The fuselage is completely covered, and here's one of the pictures of tapes, patches, and grommets that were installed. Next picture. Another picture of just the tapes being installed on the top longeron of the fuselage. Next picture. This is the fuselage is rolled up on its side. You're actually looking at the belly of the fuselage, and just an example of how the tapes are installed. They are the first process is to brush on the poly brush with 2 coats, and then you lay the tape over and spread another layer of poly brush with your brush, and the poly brush actually seals and penetrates the fabric and bonds the layers together, almost like a glue, I guess you would say. Next. I'm in the spray booth now. This is the one of the elevators. The rudder. And the first process after the tapes are complete is to spray a complete coat of poly brush. In the old days, they would brush this on, but with the advent of some decent spray equipment, I guess spraying is quicker and really more effective because the pressure from the spray gun pushes the the material down into the weave of the fabric and gives a better penetration and thereby more protection. Next page, or next photo. This is the fuselage. It's been completely coated with polybrush, sprayed on. There are actually two coats here. The first coat is sprayed and then immediately brushed with a foam brush in order to help penetrate. And after it dries, a second coat is sprayed on. Polyfiber actually recommends a few more coats than just two, but in that this is the objective of this aircraft is to be light and powerful. Carbon Cub crafters uses a little bit different procedures. The next step would be poly spray. This is the poly spray. It provides ultraviolet protection for the fabric. It is a high solids paint with aluminum pigment, and the aluminum sinks to the bottom quite quickly. You have to stir it every time you get more paint. So there's a lot of aluminum pigment here in this product. Next page. This is the rudder shown in poly spray, or I'm sorry, poly brush. And then in front of that is an elevator shown in poly spray, just to show the difference. Next. Here are the elevators just hanging from the ceiling, and just sprayed them with poly spray. The poly spray and poly brush have both an MEK base, and so this is just showing an example of some attention to detail that I had to take care of. There were some brush marks and some imperfections in the finish, and so a little MEK rubbed over it cleans off the material and lets you take out and sand the trash out, and then you respray it. Next. Here's the fuselage completed with the first coat of poly spray. Next. The fuselage is complete and ready for paint, and also the tail feathers. So I've moved on now to the wings. Both wings, of course, have been complete for quite some time, and so the wings are out on the sawhorses, and I'm starting to cover. Next. First step in cover is to make sure the wing is all complete and inspect the rivets and the workmanship of the fabrication, and then to check the wing carefully for sharp spots and put on some masking tape, and that's what this is showing here. Masking tape over all the sharp edges to protect the fabric once it's in place. Next. Also, there's some inter-rib bracing or lacing that's placed, and that's what this is showing. It helps just hold the rib in place once the fabric is in place and when you begin the shrinking process. Next. This is the leading edge of the wing, and the tape, the masking tape here is actually where the glue seam will be. You just mask it so that the glue seam can be nice and straight. And all the glue seams are, they say, quite visible through the paint process, so you want them to look neat and sharp. Next. So here's the top fabric. I'm using poly tack along this glue seam, and I just go a foot or two at a time because the poly tack dries so quickly, and then just lay the fabric in place over the glue. And then from the backside, next picture, from the backside, begin to just pull out the tape. You don't want the tape to lay there, of course. Pull out the tape as the fabric has been glued in place. Next picture. So here's the wing with the fabric laying in place, and there's a good bit of trimming and cutting, as you can see, that goes on. So that's what this is showing. Next. Trimming at the aileron and flap hanger. Next. This is the wing tip, and the fabric's been cut off, and it's just glued and then ironed to shape around the bottom edge of the wing. Next. That may be the last one, I think. Yeah. So the project's really going well, and I am enjoying the fabric cover. There are some challenges, of course, with the heat and the humidity that we're seeing here in Texas. So I find myself at the hangar early mornings to work during the cooler times of the day. That's it.
Hey, Jim, that's some real great craftsmanship. So when you start painting, the next thing that you put on, say the fuselage, will just be a color coat, or is there another?
No, yeah. After the poly brush and the poly spray are in place, they recommend that you let it set for at least a week before you ever get to paint. And I'm sure it's going to be more than a few weeks before I get to paint because I'm working on the wings. But the paint is next. Yes.
Well, you're going to be good at spraying since you effectively have to paint the airplane, what, 6 times?
Yeah.
It's a lot of
I'm really used to the spray gun. By the way, I'm using a Warwick 904 HE. It's a HVLP spray gun, and with all this material so far, I'm using a 2.0 tip, which is working really well. I'm really pleased with the gun. It's a medium price spray gun, by the way.
Okay, excellent. Really nice job, Jim. It's looking good. I think Daryl is working on his electronics right now. So what have you got for us, Daryl?
Good morning. I got my avionics. I'm on the final stage here. And by the way, Miles, I have to say the video and audio were terrific on those videos. It came across really well. So even though you're sitting outside, it really looked good. I looked at Stein and I looked at all the other avionics out there. You know, Stein has a 10-month wait, I think, for panels, and I really wanted to get away from the traditional circuit breakers or fuses. I just didn't want to lose the real estate. I'm building an RV7, so I really wanted to go with electronic circuit breakers. So I ended up going with advanced flight systems, and if you haven't seen what they have to offer, it's actually a pretty cool system. They have this device that they call an ACM, and here's a picture of it here. The one on the right is fused, and the one on the left is the one I went with that has electronic circuit breakers. And they basically build your panel, and everything comes back to this unit, and it's all just D-sub connectors at that point. They build out and test the upper half of these connections. So all that upper half goes to all of your panel equipment, such as your PFDs and your MFD and your navigator, your audio panel. All those are built out and tested. So you get it with just the D-sub connectors all done. What you have to do is pretty much wire this with power. You see the power inputs on the left side there. And then you have to do the bottom 4. Those bottom 4 go to your aircraft front, aircraft rear, your control sticks, and your flaps and trim. So that's kind of what you're supposed to do. Next. Think of it like a big fuse panel. This is the inside of it, right? You see the power coming in there and it just distributes power. Each pin is rated to only 5 amps. So there's sometimes, like for the keto heat, you have to solder sleeve a couple of pins together, and they show you how to do that and which pins to use. So that's kind of, if you just think of it as a big fuse panel. Next please. This is the one page in their panel that shows how to lay your equipment out in an RV7. They give you one page and kind of say, this is the best way we've kind of like to do it. And you'll see the panels mounted over on the left. If you have an RV14, like everything else, they have like 50 pages with RV14 and pictures showing you how to do it with an RV14. So I'm a little jealous of the 14 guys because they really have much better documentation. So I kind of use this to start with. And next, please. I got my panel. It took 8 weeks from the time I ordered it to the time it actually arrived. This is my panel here. I went with Dyson 10-inch HDX screens. You see the circle hole, that's for my G5 backup. And then my 2 square holes there, one's for the comm panel and one's for the Garmin 355 navigator I'm putting in it. The 355 is a newer model from Garmin. It's a certified navigator and a radio, so that'll be my second radio that I put in it. Over on the far left, you'll see the little switch panel there with the toggle switch. That's for my PMag. I've got one slick, impulse coupled slick mag, and then I've got a PMag. So my slick mag, I'll just use for the key. And then to test my run up on my PMags, the toggle switch there on the left side. It's pretty standard with these guys. They have a few configurations that you can play around with the switches, but they pretty much give you choice A, B, C, or D if you go with them. And then all these switches, they just are a ribbon cable back to that ACM to connect them all up. Next, please. So here's a top-down view that I'm working on. You'll see I have it mounted on the left side where they suggest. Over on the right, the two gold boxes, that's one's the transceiver, one's the radio from Diamond. You see I got my pitot and static lines coming up through there with some RG400 cable that'll terminate. And that's it mounted. Next. There's another picture of the transceiver and radio that I have mounted there. The black box on the far right, that's the monitoring that does all the engine monitoring and everything else. And it's all D-subs back over to the ACM. Next. There's all the wires run, left hanging. A lot of these have already been terminated, but as you guys know, when you run wires, you run them, mark them, and keep going. So that's what I did there. Next. There's one of my D-subs. You'll see they all come back in there, and you have to terminate them, and they give you very detailed schematics on which pinouts go where, and they kind of show you, obviously making sure that when you secure these things, there's no tension on the actual pins. Next, that's my external GPS that'll feed the navigator and my ELT. I sent this picture, just want to do a quick call out to Joe. He helped me come over to mount that GPS. I was in the tunnel back riveting it while he was on top with the bucking bar helping me get that mounted. Obviously that's a two-man job. I got all that done, and that's all completed. Next. There's my panel installed. That's it right there. I've got the components out, obviously. So it's pretty straightforward. Next, please. And as you can see from this one, I've got the panel installed and a lot of the D-subs connected already. I'm almost ready to have my top. I'm almost ready to rivet my top roof on. I'm hoping to actually power all these up in the next couple of weeks. So a lot of work has been done. Now I get to do the other end of the circuits. Next. I went with, if you guys have ever seen the Fly LEDs, I'm going to use the Fly LEDs for all of my lights, my landing lights, strobe lights, tail lights. They actually have a strobe board that gets mounted out on the wing like a lot of them do. They actually have a new board they just come out with. You see it in this picture here where it says Fly LEDs. If you scroll down for me, Miles, or blow it back out, there you go, the green board there. What they do is they actually have a board and it's a pass-through on that D25 connector. They pull their strobe information right off of the ACM and do their little whizzy dig with it and send it on down its way. And the rest of the pins are just pass-through. And I just thought it was kind of cool. Here's another company that's based out of Australia that's making components that interface with this ACM. I just thought it was kind of neat. Next, please. I think this is the last one. Yeah, here you can see what they're doing. They're pulling they've got their CPU embedded on that card, and the ACM does the wig-wag function automatically. You can set that based on the airspeed inside that control module. So they don't need as many electronics out on the powering their strobes. They're using what's already in the ACM. The other thing they're doing here, if you see in the lower right-hand corner, they've got that red power line coming. That's actually spliced in. I actually ran a wire from my taxi lights, which is on a different connector. When you're taxiing, they'll illuminate the strobes at a reduced power to increase your taxi light area around your wings. I think that's the last one. So that's my update on my avionics.
Hey, Daryl, that's a great update. I'm glad we're seeing all these different areas of expertise. We got the fabric, we got the electronics. So we're hoping to see that thing all lit up next month, and all the smoke staying in the wires. That's what they just said. Yeah.
Well, I was going to borrow Brent's smoke maker.
Yeah. Okay, don't give away any hints. Excellent. Hey, Bill Donahoe, I think, yeah, we've got Bill Donahoe on his update here.
Okay, first slide, building an RV-10, and this is the quick build cockpit section. Much of that is done in the Philippines. There's a fair amount still to do once you get installing the floors and some of the bracing that they didn't do and the steps and so forth. Next slide, please. And here is the cockpit hooked up to the tail cone. That's two of the three big parts on the airplane, but that's merely a matter of a bunch of rivets and a lot of help. Riveting from Rich Jankowski, we got it put together. It's very nice. Next slide, please. And there is the beginning of the plastic work, which is probably a third of the work on the RV-10 and is much hated by many people. We have to sand that, cut it, and fit it to the cockpit top and the tail cone before you move on to the next big project. Next slide, please. Shazam! Next slide, please. There they are, all three together, nicely fit. I've got it's not quite a rotisserie. I am with the setup that you see, the tail mount and the two on the sides. I can actually rotate that 90 degrees in either direction, and we'll do so once the top is removed to complete the rest of the fuselage, which has significant work to go with wiring and fuel pumps and stuff like that. Next slide, please. And here it is, the next set of cutting. This is the doors. Another big part of the plastic project. See a bunch of debris from the doors hanging there. Next slide, please. And there it is. The doors are on the airplane and glued together. And now I've cut them to fit to the openings. And they fit very nicely considering that the mold leaves a lot to be desired from Vans. We wish he would use carbon fiber, make it about 80 pounds lighter and have a much better fitting top, but a fair amount of work goes to make all that work. Next slide, please. Here it is yesterday. Door mechanisms installed, right doors fit completely and locked in. That door is pretty much done. The other door is close behind it. A shout out to all those who helped, Rich and Joe and Alan and Jim and Robert. Appreciate all the help and the advice. I can't say enough about having the expertise at the field. Love to come over and give you advice and help. So that's gone really well. Best tools for doing this. Surprisingly, the big belt sander that you buy, that's a two-hand operation, is the best thing to do for sanding. And finish that with the die grinder and a 2-inch roll lock pad. The initial cuts done with the air saw, that's about a $10 purchase from Harbor Freight. Believe it or not, it works really well, and it'll cut through that stuff very easily. Finish all of that with hand sanding and block sanders, and I've got 90% done and 90% to go. So
hey, thanks, Bill. That's a huge step, is getting through that fiberglass work. Of course, you know, fiberglass isn't ever, you're never done with fiberglass till you quit. At least that's what Archer says. So,
yeah. More comment. If you're going to do the fiberglass work, it's best to do it outside because you don't crumb up your hanger and the rest of what could be in there. And obviously this time of year, that's hard to do, but fans and so forth really help.
Excellent. Well, like you said, 90% done and 90% to go. And I think Don Guns has a great update for us on the 90% rule. So Don, can you tell us what was going on last week?
Well, the picture on the screen, there's 2 FAA examiners in there that showed up on the 8th of July. They spent about an hour. I had a table set up on documentation. One guy sat down, read the documentation. Other guy took a flashlight and walked around and took pictures. They finished in about 50 minutes, and I had an airworthiness certificate. And
excellent.
Then last night, Jankowski took the plane out and put about 2 hours on it, and it went fantastic. The the project's a 4-year project, with a tremendous contribution from our EAA community to keep this thing going. It really does take a village to build one of these things. So, big shout out to everybody that was part of this, but it's ready to go. Rich, are you on the line? Can you speak to the flying? I'm probably a good month away before I'm going to be in the left seat of the so Rich flew it last about 2 hours.
Yeah, Don's airplane flew exceptionally well. There were no trim problems on it. And if you look at the flight-aware track, both the initial flight where I circled over the field and then where I went up with Dick Stevens, where we went up to Huntsville, you can see that the speeds on the aircraft are really quite good. It was showing typically 190 mile an hour speeds because we're running at high power settings to break in the engine. The engine settled in very quickly, and but the flight test area, it was very restrictive by virtue of what the guy issued in the op specs. And when you got a 190 mile an hour airplane, it is something that it would be nicer to have had a larger area. And that's something that's negotiated when you work with the FAA on issuing the flight test area. So other than the restrictions on the flight test area, the airplane is flying really great. The instrumentation in the cockpit, Dick's got to do setting up the limits on the engine monitoring things, so we're not getting a lot of red lines and warnings when we don't need them. But the airplane flew, it's cooling really good. The oil temperature all the time was below 220, and most of the time it was around 212 on a very hot day. And all of the cylinder head temperatures settled down in the 380, 390 degree range by the end of the second flight. So all good. Transponder worked perfectly. Got a transponder report on it, and just a really great flying, hands-off flying aircraft. Also, tonight I'm going to try to fly Mark Buchanan's RV-6A, which has been a little bit more of a challenge. It has one of those Sam James cowlings on it, and we're taking a fourth attempt at getting the first flight in. A combination of cooling problems with the oil cooling on Mark's airplane as opposed to Don's airplane. Don's airplane, standard van cowling, standard van setup, and it works really good. The other one being a little bit of a challenge. I think with Mark's airplane, a lot of it is just an instrumentation problem from the Dynon engine module, which has been replaced. So anyway, looking for a successful test flight on Mark's airplane tonight, but Don's airplane, really, really good.
Excellent, Rich. Nice job. You're keeping everybody flying out there and doing a great job of it. That's super to have your expertise available. So you're going to start getting more and more phone calls if you keep hanging yourself out like this. That's great.
Monday we go pick up Brent's airplane so they can get to work and finish up on yours. So
I know.
On Tuesday noontime, we should see Brent's airplane sitting on the ramp in front of his hangar, and I'm sure it's going to look really beautiful when it's down here.
Excellent. We're looking forward to that too. So Brent, get ready to give us an update next month. I went and saw another one of our members yesterday, Mark Chalia, who's building an RV-10 down in the Woodlands area, and he's at about the same place that Daryl reported himself. He's got a lot of wires hanging around in the cockpit. He's got all of his avionics boxes installed physically where they're going to go, and then we're running wires to that. So he's cooking along too, and I'm hoping to see maybe those two airplanes flying before the end of the year. So we got a lot of stuff. A lot of airplanes are going to hatch out of the egg here this year. So that's good to see. People are maybe out of their spare time being able to build airplanes now.
Hey, Joe, one other thing. I spent some time this week down at Poly Ranch, actually one full half day, 12 hours. And we were able to complete the attachment of the rear and front sections of the fuselage on Mark Taquard's RV-10, and we were able to do the initial fit of the canopy on that aircraft. This is a later kit, and the canopy was actually an improved version, not really a great version, but an improved version of the canopy, and it's going to go a little bit easier on the fitting of the doors, I'm sure.
He had the gray one as opposed to the pink one, right?
Yeah, the gray one as opposed to the pink one, but yeah, we got that all done in one day, though. That was from the initial scratches that they had to it sitting in place. Fussy Fit's probably going to take 2 more days before we can get that sunk in. But since he doesn't have his finishing kit and we don't have the doors, there's really no sense in going forward with that at this time. So he's switching over to other details on the aircraft.
Hey, good. We're looking forward to an update from him. Maybe we can, when we have a actual meeting, we can get him to come up here. He can fly up. If you guys don't know who that is, he bought Doug Knabb's RV-8, and he's flying it down there at Piley Ranch. Decided to move on with an RV-10 in addition to his 8, so good for him.
Yeah, Mark's my replacement at United Flight Test. But he's a former Marine AV-8 pilot, and he did the F-35 test on a vertical lift F-35. So real interesting guy, really good with tools though. Really hard worker, really good with tools.
Excellent. Wow. And we've got lots of updates. I don't see anything on the notes other than Kevin Southwick. You say I have one. What does that mean? Do you have an update for us on your project?
Nothing really big. This is the Whitman Tailwind W10, and it stalled. My project stalled a little bit because I want to order a fuel injection kit because it lowers my profile much lower than using a carbureted intake, and I couldn't fit my carbon fiber cowling around the large carburetor. And I talked to Fred Weaver, who has the same plane, flies it with injection, and so he talked me into it. So it's just a matter of me ordering that kit, and then we'll be off, putting that, installing that, and then going into our avionics right after that.
Hey, thanks a lot, Kevin. You know what? Most of you guys probably haven't heard Kevin's story about how he lost a wing and then he found it a year later with some internet resources. I'm not going to give away the ending, but I want you to write a story about that because it's incredible how it all came together. I like the story.
I am a writer, so I am taking full advantage of the fact that everyone I tell this little story to, just out of my usual storytelling, more faces will lean into my face than any story I've ever had. We did lose the wing. It just sort of took flight off the trailer when we were porting it from Conroe to Larry Perriman's hangar in Hillsborough. We could not find it, and so I started looking for it on Google Maps and had success. And the details I can tell you later, but we found it without any damage. It just simply took flight and landed in the bushes. It was just, we could not, I still can't believe this, but I have all kinds of pictures of that I can show you when I get my project photographic presentation pulled together.
I mean, that's a great story of sleuthing using, I mean, it's CIA kind of stuff. It's great. Being able to use satellite pictures to find a missing airplane part.
Basically looked at Google Maps and had to wait for the new maps to come out, and I didn't know when they were coming out. And most of the stuff that I found was just like a piece of cardboard or some other thing. And when I finally got to this and saw the wing, I could not, and I still cannot believe it, and that it was also, I figured it was damaged when I saw it. It was in perfect shape.
That's
we had already done the final spray and all the paint and shiny, nice. We didn't use the polyfiber. I can't remember the name of the stuff we used. It's the water-based spray stuff, and we just cleaned them off, and it looked like a brand new wing. And we brought it back to the hangar.
Get that story written up, because I tell you what, I know it's one of those great personal interest stories also that EAA loves to showcase in the sport that would be great to archive it there too. Hey, thanks a lot, Kevin. Do we have anybody else that's got a project update? I don't see anything written on our chat board. So I'll tell you what, let's move on to, this meeting's going great. I love all the updates from our personal members. It's nice to see videos of other people's projects, but when we see stuff going on here at home, it's really nice. I believe we got video hints for home builders is talking about EGT and CHT items. Miles, let's go ahead and run that. I'm seeing that you're starting to share content.
Yeah.
Miles,
you may need to stop and reshare. For some reason, it looks like it may be on a hung process there.
We locked up on that. So I'll tell you what, while we're waiting for Miles to get this thing going, I know that y'all have been, we're going to cover this a little bit later under new business or events, whichever category it wants to fall in. You know, since we're not having AirVenture this year up in Oshkosh, EAA is doing what they're calling the Spirit of Aviation Week from July 21 through 25. Lots of virtual AirVenture items going on. In addition to that, the vendors are presenting lots of things. So it's just a click away. And I mentioned to a few people that are actually in the process of purchasing items for projects these days. It's just a matter of asking, and I bet you're going to be able to get some AirVenture special deals on pricing for different things, because all the vendors are trying to encourage people to purchase their items just like they always do. And so you can get some price savings as well. Miles, how we doing there? Still coming up with it. As far as EAA, what they're doing for Spirit of Aviation, I pulled up just the EAA website, .org, and you can see on there that they've got a countdown to when they start. If you've been up to AirVenture, you know that there's all kind of seminars going on, and you can't possibly hit all of them that you want to go to because a lot of them overlap. The good news is they're all going to be on the computer. You'll be able to watch whichever seminar you want. And if there happens to be two of them going at the same time, no problem, because they're going to archive all the information. And you can definitely indulge yourself with lots of different items. I'm looking on specifically what's coming up on the 21st. We've got how to buy an airplane, climb performance, sheet metal workshop. All those workshops are going to be virtually done as well. And lots of information. And I think they're going to progress from, so you want to build an airplane or buy an airplane on Monday all the way to Friday. You're going to get to go through all the minor details involved. So look forward to watching all those seminars on the video. So it looks like Miles has the EGT CHT thing brought up for us. Let's go ahead and watch that. Not getting audio, Miles. There we go.
CHT or EGT is really a voltmeter. And so what we're doing is we're using a thermocouple probe, which is used to generate the electricity. And so it's a millivoltmeter and a CHT probe, a thermocouple that consists of a couple of different types of metal, usually iron constantan, alumel chromel. There's several other combinations of these materials that are used depending on the temperatures that we want to measure. And we create that voltage self-contained within the probe, the wiring, and the instrument. The instrument doesn't have to connect to anything else on the aircraft in order to function correctly. In fact, you could have an engine with all the electrical shut off, and the indications would still be accurate at that point. And that's important to know from a safety standpoint. So let's take a look at what we've got inside of these instruments. In this case right here, I've got an EGT combination, EGT and CHT gauge. And on the back of this, you'll see it's nothing more than a couple of little millivoltmeters, little analog setup right there. And let's go ahead and demonstrate this. Let's just hook up an EGT probe. Either of these will work fine. And I'm going to hook it up. Let's heat this up to start with. So let's crank this up, turn that down so it's not terribly noisy. And then what I'm going to do is just preheat this a little bit so I've got some temperature to work with. And then I'll set that aside. And then let's go back to the back of this gauge right here. We'll hook up one lead here. Let's push this back here so it's a little more loose. When I have that hooked up, I'm basically operating that gauge by generating a little voltage that goes through those miniature windings here. And we're going to indication on that. Now that's really kind of interesting because let's take and do the same thing here with the CHT. And let's just hook up the CHT lead like this. And let's hook the other end to our voltmeter down here. And I've got this set on, let's set it on millivolts here because that's what we want to measure. And I'll grab this probe. I'm just going to hold it in my hand here. And you'll notice that even the heat of my hand is now generating a change and a measurement that it's very small, of course. And then if we do the same thing to this probe, and we heat it up, you will see that the voltage rises as we heat it up. The higher the voltage, the more temperature we're going to put out on the gauge. So it's a direct correlation and accurate, really. So I'm getting a good indication there. I'm going to go ahead and switch these leads to the back of the CHT gauges right here. And of course, you can see I'm reading fairly high on the gauge right there. While you're troubleshooting, though, that's one of the difficulties of these things is sometimes you'll have to troubleshoot the thing and find out why they're not working. But because it's self-contained, it's pretty simple to do. There's a couple of tests that you can do with this thing. The first is, if it's not reading anything, it may simply be that the wires have been reversed. And because this is a voltmeter, it would just be reading negative and the needle would be buried going the opposite direction at that point. And all you got to do is swap those around. And of course, if that fixes it, you know the problem's there. The other problem that you might run into is you might run into a problem where you've got it open in the lead, maybe a broken wire. Maybe the connectors were not crimped on very well or soldered on well, or maybe there's just oxidation on the connectors that you're working with. So we can test these probes, both CHT and EGT. We're normally looking for less than 2 ohms resistance on those. And so let's just put it on our ohm meter here and we'll test these wires, see what we're reading here. And we're 0.3 there. Let me just check it going the other way here. Yeah, so we're still less than 2 ohms. That's another good test, just really quick to find out if you've got an open. You can do it all the way from the cockpit, all the way out to the probe. Either way will work. But the system is pretty simple and pretty self-contained. Once you understand how they work, it's pretty easy even to go ahead and take your probe out and start heating the probe, have someone hold it over a flame, and then as you just wiggle the wires, have someone in the cockpit watching that, and you'll get a signal, and that'll tell you where that broken wire was. So pretty good troubleshooting tricks and tips that you're going to find. If you've got EGT, CHT systems, you're going to have some problems over the time. And the more cylinders you got, the more problems you've got. So use these tips to help yourself next time you need to troubleshoot one of the EGT, CHT instruments.
Hey, Miles, thanks a lot. I believe you're going to roll right into telling us what happened on this day in aviation history. What'd you come up with for us this month?
Well, I didn't come up with anything for this one. So
wait a minute, it's on the schedule.
I failed on that one. So
Who is, I don't know what that noise is in the background. That's an unusual one. How about this day in
some guy
aviation?
next door is chopping his tree down. So
Oh, okay. I thought it was a sick pig or something. All right. Well, let's move on. I think you mentioned you got some information for us on board at home webinars. I kind of brought us up to date a little bit on that with the Spirit of Aviation. What other webinar stuff have you got listed for us, as well as events in the calendar?
give me just a second.
I know Patchy normally covers our events. He's on an event today himself. He flew out to Fredericksburg. I'm not sure what's going on out there other than heat. So maybe we can hear from him next month. But,
so we got a board meeting on the 13th, 4:30 p.m. The Conroe Airport Advisory Board meeting. That's Lone Star Convention and Expo Center. I'm not sure what day the 13th is. I guess that's Tuesday. No, that's Monday.
Yeah.
And the Rusty Pilot Seminar coming up on July 16th. That's at 11 a.m. if you want to go for that one. The legal traps for the unwary coming up on July 29th. That's an EAA webinar. That's 7 to 8:30 on the 29th. And on August 1st, I don't know if they're still doing this, but Pineville's got a fly-in scheduled for a Saturday fly-in breakfast on August 1st at 2L0. I don't know if you've ever flown into that airport. It's a pretty cool airport. It's fly past the bridge, over a lake, through a river, and come over a tree line onto the airport. It's kind of a cool little place to fly into. Airport's right next to the river, 165 nautical miles away. So that's what we've got.
You talking about Pineville, Louisiana?
Yeah, Pineville.
Yeah, and their EA chapter building is really cool too. They've done a nice job building that thing up, and they always put on a good pancake.
So that's what we've got going on here for the next month.
Sure.
And then we've got a meeting scheduled on the 8th. I don't know if we're virtual or getting together, but
it's going to always be up to whatever the governor's doing recently. So, or more currently. So we always make that decision, based on what's going on with the governor at that time. You still hearing me? Let me see. Somehow, yeah,
a little bit there for a second, but
somehow I got myself screwed up, and I'm not seeing myself in the meeting, although I'm hearing everything. So, tell you what, I think we've actually already covered all the new business and old business next, and I think that brings us up to the 50-50 giveaway. So, Donahoe, have you got any money this month besides that I sent you? And who's going to win?
Okay, so the swindle, as you know, it's made by donations. I did make a donation myself, and I did get a cancel from PayPal after a 10-second delay. So once again, your donations are making it. Thank you. But don't be concerned. We fought with PayPal over their issues, and I suspect we might be stuck with this situation for a while. So we took in $132 today, $130 on the swindle. We go 50-50 on that, and then we divide it up so we have two winners of $32 each. And now for a drum roll, please. Our first winner. I got it, Joe. Good job. Jerry Ferrick. Good job, Jerry. Thanks for the donation. You are a big winner, $32 coming your way at a next meeting where we can physically give you the money. Second big winner, $32, Jim Oracle. Thank you, Jim. I know this won't put a lot of paint on your airplane, but maybe it'll buy you a brush.
Excellent. Excellent.
Comes down to the last big winner. Since we can't do the name tag, we can certainly do the picture. And I used a random number generator to come up with these numbers and compare it to the list. And Miles Dempster, you are the winner. I've seen your face on the website. So there you have it. That's a $10 gift card to Black Walnut for lunch. Should they ever open again?
Yeah, I got two in the bank now. We need to have a meeting so I can collect.
Yeah, I think Farrakhan keeps winning every month too. I don't know about this randomness of your generator there, Bill. Congratulations to all of our winners. So
I would like to say thank you, Terry Monroe. You're the first one to donate every single time. So you got the lead. I'm not sure you're going to be a winner at this point, but the number one doesn't seem to come up much.
yeah. All right. Hey, listen, guys, great video meeting. Daryl, how many participants did we cobble together this month? Can you tell?
So we had 29 today, Joe.
Yeah, we're probably, I'm not surprised. Well, I am surprised that we get that many. I'm not surprised that our numbers are starting to drop off a little bit. I know everybody's doing their best to take care of themselves during this time. We're going to try to, we're going to get together in a real meeting whenever we can, and look forward to that time. But in the meantime, it sounds like everybody's doing a good job of continuing to build. It's a little hot, so it's a little bit tough to fly, but like the guys have been talking, they're flying in the evenings. Rich, I think you said you're going to fly tonight. That's not a bad idea to get out there later in the evening and put things together. So we're looking forward to hearing more updates next month. Daryl, get your panel powered up. Brent, get your airplane back here painted. Maybe a couple of new paint jobs or some colors on Moracle's airplane. And with that, let's go ahead and close out. We're going to do a high flight again today. And we'll see you again next month or out at the airport. Take it easy, guys.
See it.
Well, I think you get the idea. The audio doesn't seem to be working with us, but the video looks pretty cool. Good times at a T-38 rolling around through the clouds. Anyway, we'll see y'all next month. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everybody.
And flung my eager track through this small space.